The huge metal doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a loud bang. Admiral Kane Harrison sat tied to a cold metal chair, his hands locked in heavy chains. He could not move, but his eyes followed every movement in the room. 12 different alien species sat around a giant circle, all staring down at him like he was some kind of bug they wanted to step on. The chamber was enormous, with walls that went up so high they disappeared into darkness. Strange lights floated in the air, casting weird shadows that moved and twisted. The floor was made of some kind of black stone that seemed to drink in light. Everything about this place was meant to make people feel small and afraid. Admiral Harrison had been in many battles during his 30 years in space. He had fought pirates, survived ship crashes, and seen things that would give most people nightmares. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The aliens were not here to talk or make deals. They were here to make an example out of humanity. The worst part was not what they planned to do to him. The worst part was watching them drag in Lisa Carter. Lisa was only 20 years old. She had joined the crew of the Horizon Dawn just 6 months ago as a communications officer. She was smart, brave, and always had a smile for everyone on the ship. Her parents back on Earth had been so proud when she got accepted into the space program. Now she was here in chains because these aliens wanted to hurt humanity. The creature that seemed to be in charge stepped forward. It was called Veltar, and it looked like a giant insect made of black metal. It had 4 arms, each ending in claws that could probably cut through steel. Its head was shaped like a triangle with 3 red eyes that never seemed to blink. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Humans," Veltar said, the word dripping with disgust. "You have broken the most sacred laws of this galaxy. You have entered the sacred zones, places that have been forbidden for thousands of years. You think you can do whatever you want just because you learned how to travel between stars." Admiral Harrison tried to speak, but something was covering his mouth. He could only watch as Veltar walked closer to Lisa. The young woman looked scared, but she kept her back straight and her chin up. She was trying to be brave, even though everyone in the room could see her hands shaking. "This young female will pay for your crimes," Veltar continued. "We will use her to send a message to every human in the galaxy. You are not welcome here. You are nothing but insects that learn to fly, and we will crush you before you can spread any further." Other aliens around the room nodded in agreement. There was one that looked like it was made of blue light, floating in the air and humming strange songs. Another looked like a walking tree made of crystal, its branches clicking together as it moved. In a tank of water sat something that might have been a giant fish with too many eyes. All of them stared at Lisa like she was something they wanted to destroy. Admiral Harrison had read the reports about these aliens. Humans called them the Galactic Council, but they were really just bullies who had been in space longer than anyone else. They made rules that only helped them, and they destroyed anyone who did not follow those rules. Humans had tried to be peaceful, to follow their laws, but it was never enough. The sacred zones were areas of space that the Council said no one could enter. But they never explained why these areas were forbidden. Human scientists thought there might be important discoveries there. New planets where people could live, or resources that could help everyone in the galaxy. When the exploration ship Horizon Dawn had entered one of these zones to study a strange energy reading, the Council had attacked without warning. Now Lisa was going to pay the price for humanity's curiosity. "Please," Lisa said, her voice small in the huge chamber. "I was just doing my job. I never meant to hurt anyone. If you want to punish someone, punish me, but please leave my people alone." Veltar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your people. Your entire species is guilty. You humans think you are special, but you are nothing. We have destroyed 100 species better than yours. Today we begin the process of removing you from our galaxy." More aliens entered the chamber, wheeling in machines that Admiral Harrison did not recognize. The devices looked medical, but there was something wrong about them. They had too many sharp edges, too many places where electricity sparked and jumped. These were not machines meant to heal. These were machines meant to cause pain. Lisa saw the machines and her face went pale, but she did not cry or beg. Instead, she looked across the room at Admiral Harrison. Their eyes met, and she mouthed words that only he could understand. "Tell my parents I tried to make them proud." Admiral Harrison felt his heart break. This brave young woman was about to suffer, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He pulled against his chains until his wrists bled, but the metal did not budge. The aliens had made sure he could only watch. "Begin," Veltar ordered. The floating blue alien moved closer to Lisa, its light getting brighter and more painful to look at. "We will start with simple neural probes," it said in a voice like singing wind. "These will feel like fire inside your skull. Most species break after just a few minutes." Admiral Harrison watched in horror as they attached wires to Lisa's head. The young woman closed her eyes and took deep breaths, preparing herself for what was coming. Around the chamber, other members of the council leaned forward, eager to watch the show. The machines hummed to life and Lisa's body went stiff. Her eyes flew open wide with pain, but she did not scream. Admiral Harrison could see her fighting, using every bit of strength she had to stay silent. She would not give these monsters the satisfaction of hearing her suffer, but Admiral Harrison knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had hours ahead of them, and they would not stop until they got what they wanted. As he watched the torture begin, one thought kept running through his mind. If humanity survived this, there would be a reckoning. These aliens had no idea what they were about to unleash. 6 hours passed like years in the torture chamber. Admiral Harrison had stopped counting the different machines they brought to hurt Lisa. Each one was worse than the last, designed by aliens who had spent centuries learning how to cause pain. The floating blue creature, which called itself a luminary, seemed to enjoy explaining every horrible detail. "Observe how the human brain responds to psychic intrusion," the luminary said, its voice like music that had turned evil. "See how their primitive nervous system cannot handle our mental probes. Most species would be dead by now, but humans seem surprisingly durable." Lisa had not made a sound for the past hour. Her body shook and twisted in the chair as electricity ran through her bones, but her lips stayed pressed together. Blood ran from her nose and ears, staining her blue uniform dark red. Her eyes had rolled back in her head, showing only white, but somehow Admiral Harrison knew she was still fighting. The crystal tree alien, one of the Kethmori, stepped forward with a new device. It looked like a small pyramid made of sharp glowing stones. "Pain crystals," it announced, its voice like breaking ice. "These will make every cell in her body feel like it is burning from the inside." They pressed the crystal against Lisa's arm, and for the first time, she made a noise. It was not a scream, just a small gasp like someone had knocked the air out of her lungs, but it was enough to make Admiral Harrison pull so hard against his chains that he felt something tear in his shoulder. Captain Rodriguez sat in the observation deck above the torture chamber, forced to watch everything. He was the head of security for the Horizon Dawn, and seeing his crew member suffer was destroying him. Around him, other human prisoners wept and prayed. Some whispered promises of revenge, others begged their gods to make it stop. "Look at how they break," said one of the council members, a slug-like creature with too many eyes. "Humans are so emotional, so weak. This is why they cannot be allowed to spread through our galaxy." But Rodriguez noticed something the aliens missed. Every time they hurt Lisa, every time she fought back without screaming, the other humans in the room stood a little straighter. Her courage was giving them strength, and Rodriguez could see anger building in their eyes. The aliens thought they were breaking humanity, but they were actually forging it into something harder. Down in the chamber, Veltar was getting frustrated. 6 hours, he snarled, his metal claws scraping against the floor. 6 hours and she has not confessed to her species' crimes. She has not begged for mercy. What is wrong with this creature? The fish thing in the water tank spoke through a translator that made its voice sound like drowning. Perhaps we are not trying hard enough. There are methods that affect the soul itself, not just the body. Admiral Harrison felt cold terror run through him. He had heard stories about soul torture, ways of hurting someone that went beyond anything physical. It was supposed to be banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. But these aliens did not seem to care about their own laws. They brought in a new machine, this one covered in symbols that hurt to look at. The air around it seemed to bend and twist like reality itself was afraid of the device. When they activated it, Admiral Harrison felt something terrible wash over the room, something that made him want to curl up and hide like a child. Lisa's eyes snapped open, wide with a fear deeper than anything she had shown before. This was not just pain anymore. This was something trying to tear apart everything that made her who she was. Admiral Harrison watched as tears finally started running down her face, not from pain, but from pure terror. "There we go," Veltar said with satisfaction. "Now we see the true face of humanity. Weak, afraid, broken." But even as the Soul Ripper tore into her, Lisa turned her head to look at Admiral Harrison. Her lips moved, forming words he could barely see. Not broken. Never broken. The torture went on. They used time machines that made seconds feel like hours, so Lisa experienced every moment of pain in slow motion. They used gravity weapons that made her feel like she weighed 1,000 pounds. They used sound devices that made her bones vibrate until cracks appeared in them. Through it all, she kept looking at the other humans in the room. Not at her captors, not at the machines, but at her people. Admiral Harrison realized she was not just enduring this torture. She was taking it on purpose, showing everyone that humans could not be broken no matter what these aliens did. "Remarkable," said the Luminari, though its musical voice now sounded confused. "Her brain patterns are unlike anything we have seen. Instead of breaking down, they seem to be changing, evolving." Captain Rodriguez checked his watch obsessively. He had been timing everything since the torture began, though he was not sure why. Maybe he wanted to remember exactly how long it took for these aliens to murder an innocent young woman. Maybe he wanted evidence for the war crimes trial that would never happen. The crystal alien was getting worried. "Her life signs are becoming erratic. Perhaps we should stop and let her recover before continuing." "No," Veltar snarled. "We continue until she breaks or dies. Either result sends the message we want." They increased the power on all the machines. Lisa's body arched in the chair as every torture device worked at once. Her heart started beating irregularly, visible on the monitors around the room. Her breathing became shallow and fast, then slower and more labored. "She is dying," announced the medical scanner in a flat electronic voice. "Critical organ failure detected. Estimated time to death 3 minutes. Admiral Harrison screamed through his gag, fighting his restraints with desperate strength. Around the room, other humans were crying and shouting, but the aliens paid them no attention. They were too focused on watching Lisa die. Her heartbeat got weaker and weaker on the monitor. The line that showed her brain activity started to flatten. At exactly 14:37 ship time, according to Captain Rodriguez's watch, all the machines went silent. The monitors showed flat lines. The medical scanner announced in its emotionless voice, "Subject deceased. Total brain death confirmed. Lisa Carter was dead." Beltar nodded with satisfaction. "Dispose of the body. Bring in the next human for questioning." But Admiral Harrison was not listening to the alien's words. He was staring at Lisa's face, peaceful now that the pain had stopped. Something inside him had changed during those 6 hours of watching. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time was starting to wake up. He did not know it yet, but in exactly 43 minutes, everything was going to change. Admiral Harrison stared at Lisa's body, tears streaming down his face. The young woman who had been so full of life just hours ago now lay still and cold in the torture chair. Her face was peaceful, but the blood on her uniform and the burns on her skin told the story of what these monsters had done to her. The council members were already moving on, discussing what to do with humanity like they were talking about the weather. The blue luminary floated in circles, humming what might have been a happy song. The crystal alien clicked its branches together in what sounded like approval. Veltar stood over Lisa's body like a hunter showing off his kill. "Excellent work," said the slug creature with too many eyes. "That should send a clear message to the rest of their species. Now shall we discuss the terms of their surrender?" Captain Rodriguez sat in the observation deck above, his hands clenched into fists so tight that his nails drew blood from his palms. He kept checking his watch, counting the minutes since Lisa had died. 35 minutes, 38 minutes, 40 minutes. He did not know why he was counting, but something deep inside told him it was important. "I suggest we put all humans in work camps," said the fish thing from its water tank. "They are strong enough to be useful, but not smart enough to cause real trouble." "No," Veltar disagreed, his metal voice scraping through the chamber. "They are too dangerous to keep alive. We should destroy their entire species before they can spread further through our galaxy." Admiral Harrison listened to them plan the death of every human he had ever known. His wife back on Earth, his children, his grandchildren who had just started walking. These aliens were talking about murdering billions of people like they were discussing what to have for dinner. 42 minutes had passed since Lisa died. "The breeding programs might work," suggested another council member, one that looked like a walking pile of rocks. "We could keep a few thousand humans alive to study. Maybe use them for experiments." 43 minutes. At exactly 43 minutes and 12 seconds after Lisa Carter had died, something impossible happened. She took a breath. Every alarm in the chamber started screaming at once. The medical monitors that had shown flat lines suddenly spiked with activity. Lisa's heart began beating again, stronger than it had ever beaten before. Her brain activity did not just return, it exploded across the monitors in patterns the machines could not understand. The council members stopped talking and stared in shock. The luminary's humming cut off like someone had flipped a switch. The crystal alien made a sound like breaking glass. Even Veltar stepped back from the torture chair, his red eyes wide with something that might have been fear. Lisa's eyes opened, but they were not the same eyes that had closed in death 43 minutes ago. These eyes held something ancient and terrible, something that made Admiral Harrison's blood turn to ice. The restraints that had held her during 6 hours of torture simply crumbled away like they were made of sand. She sat up slowly, like someone waking from a long sleep. When she looked around the chamber, it was not with the confusion of someone who had just returned from death. It was with the calm certainty of someone who suddenly understood everything. "You have made a grave mistake," Lisa said. Her voice was different. It still sounded like Lisa, but there were other voices hidden inside it, older voices that spoke with the weight of ages. Every translator in the chamber sparked and failed, but somehow every being present understood her words perfectly. The luminary started making a sound Admiral Harrison had never heard before. It was like screaming, but made of pure terror instead of pain. Impossible. It shrieked, its blue light flickering like a broken bulb. "The Eternal Clause!" The great binding was supposed to prevent this. Lisa stood up from the torture chair, and as she did, Admiral Harrison noticed that her skin was glowing with a soft light. Not the harsh artificial glow of the aliens' technology, but something warm and alive, like starlight made flesh. "The great binding," she said, and now her voice carried echoes that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Yes, I remember now. 12,000 years ago we made a deal." She looked at each of the council members in turn, and every one of them shrank back like children caught doing something wrong. "We agreed to limit ourselves, to become smaller, weaker, more human, to forget what we really were." The crystal alien was shaking so hard that pieces of it were breaking off and falling to the floor. It spoke in rapid clicks and chimes that the broken translators could barely handle. "The progenitor protocol. The first humans. We thought it was a myth." Lisa smiled, and Admiral Harrison felt reality itself seemed to bend around that smile. "You thought many things. You thought we were weak. You thought you could torture and kill us without consequences. You thought the old agreements would protect you forever." She walked toward Veltar, and with each step she took, the huge alien backed away. But the compact had conditions. Very specific conditions. Should any species attempt to destroy humanity through systematic torture and murder, the binding would break. Veltar tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Lisa raised her hand, and the 3-ton alien began to lift off the floor like he weighed nothing at all. "You killed me," she said simply. "You broke the compact. And now every human in this galaxy will begin to remember what they truly are." Admiral Harrison felt something stirring inside him, like warm water flowing through his veins. The pain in his torn shoulder disappeared. The exhaustion from watching 6 hours of torture faded away. Knowledge began flooding his mind, memories that were not his own but somehow belonged to him anyway. Up in the observation deck, Captain Rodriguez gasped as the change hit him. His vision suddenly became sharper, able to see electromagnetic fields and gravitational currents as easily as colors. The other human prisoners around him were experiencing similar transformations, their bodies straightening, their eyes beginning to glow with the same inner light as Lisa's. "This cannot be happening," whispered the slug creature, its many eyes blinking in panic. The scan showed they were just another primitive species, just another group of meat creatures who learned to fly between stars. Lisa released Veltar, who crashed to the floor gasping. She turned to address all the council members at once. "Your scans were wrong. Humanity is not a young species that recently achieved spaceflight. We are the oldest species in this galaxy. We ruled here when your ancestors were still crawling in the mud of their home worlds. The fish thing in the water tank was trying to hide behind its filtration system. But the archaeological records," it gurgled. "The evolutionary evidence. Humans only developed intelligence 50,000 years ago. 50,000 years ago we chose to become human," Lisa corrected. "We gave up our power, our immortality, our vast knowledge, all so that younger species could grow and develop without living in fear of us." We became mortal, limited, ordinary. We forgot our true nature so completely that even we believed we were nothing special. She gestured around the chamber, where reality itself seemed to be responding to her presence. The lights grew brighter without any command. The air became easier to breathe, and the oppressive weight of the alien architecture seemed to lift. But forgetting is not the same as ceasing to exist, she continued. The power was always there, sleeping in our genes, waiting for the right moment to wake up. And that moment has come. Throughout human space, the awakening was beginning, on colony worlds and research stations. In the depths of space and the corridors of alien cities, humans were starting to remember. Scientists found themselves understanding the fundamental forces of the universe. Engineers discovered they could reshape matter with their thoughts. Soldiers realized their bodies were capable of things no training manual had ever described. The age of human weakness was ending. The age of human power was about to begin. Lisa stood in the wreckage of the torture chamber, her body glowing with soft light that seemed to come from inside her bones. She was still Lisa Carter, still the young woman from Ohio who loved old music and chocolate ice cream. But she was also something much more, something the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. Memories flooded through her mind like a dam breaking. She remembered being Lisa, growing up on her parents' farm, joining the space program, serving on the Horizon Dawn. But she also remembered other things, older things, things that had happened before humans forgot what they really were. 12,000 years ago, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, we were the rulers of this galaxy. We built the first stargates, mapped the first trade routes, brought peace to 1,000 warring worlds. Admiral Harrison felt the same memories awakening in his mind. He saw vast cities floating in space powered by energy drawn from stars themselves. He saw human explorers reaching the edge of the galaxy, finding new forms of life and protecting them until they could grow strong. He saw a golden age when humanity guided and protected all the younger species. But power corrupts, Lisa continued, looking at each of the terrified council members. Some humans began to see other species as pets or toys. They started to believe that being stronger and older gave them the right to control everything. Wars broke out, not between species but between humans who had different ideas about how to use their power. The crystal alien was still shaking, pieces of itself scattered across the floor. The Great War, it whispered. The songs speak of it, when the star gods fought and nearly destroyed everything. Lisa nodded sadly. We fought each other across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Entire solar systems were destroyed in the battles. Species that had taken millions of years to evolve were wiped out in minutes. We were becoming the very monsters we had once protected others from. Captain Rodriguez watched from above as Lisa walked through the chamber, her presence making the alien technology spark and fail. He could feel the change happening in his own body, strength flowing through him that he had never imagined possible. But with the strength came understanding, and with understanding came responsibility. So we made a choice, Lisa said. The wisest among us gathered and created the great binding. We would give up our power, our immortality, our advanced knowledge. We would become truly human, limited, and mortal, starting fresh with nothing but our basic intelligence and courage. The blue luminary was trying to back away, but there was nowhere to go in the sealed chamber. The eternal clause, it sang in terrified harmonies. You swore by the fundamental forces of reality itself. You bound yourselves with laws deeper than physics. We did, Lisa agreed. And for 12,000 years we kept that promise. We started over as primitive humans on a single world called Earth. We forgot everything, learned everything again from the beginning. We discovered fire, invented the wheel, built civilizations that rose and fell. We learned to fly, to leave our world, to travel between stars. Admiral Harrison understood now why human technology was so different from alien technology. Humans had developed everything from scratch, using their basic intelligence instead of inherited knowledge. Every discovery had been earned through experimentation and hard work. Every advance had been built on the foundation of what came before. And you, Lisa said, turning to face Veltar, you thought we were just another young species, just another group of primitives who had gotten lucky and learned to travel in space. Veltar was still on the floor where she had dropped him, his metal shell cracked from the impact. The surveys showed no signs of advanced development. Your technology was crude, your military weak.
How are we supposed to know?
You were not supposed to know, Lisa replied. That was the point of the binding. We wanted to give younger species time to grow and develop without fear. We wanted them to find their own way, make their own mistakes, build their own civilizations. The fish thing in the water tank was making bubbling sounds of panic. But if you were so powerful, why did you let us develop these weapons? Why did you let us build our empires? Lisa's expression grew sad. Because that was part of the agreement. We would not interfere, would not guide or control. You would succeed or fail on your own merits. We believed that given time and space, most species would choose to be better than their worst impulses. She gestured around the torture chamber, at the broken machines and the blood on the floor. We were wrong about some of you. The slug creature was trying to hide behind its chair, its many eyes wide with terror. The binding, it whimpered. If you gave up your power, how are you getting it back? The fundamental laws of reality should prevent this. The binding had conditions, Lisa explained, her voice growing hard. We would remain human as long as we were allowed to exist in peace. We would not reclaim our power as long as no species attempted to systematically destroy us through torture, genocide, or enslavement. She pointed at the torture chair where she had died. You tortured an innocent human to death in front of witnesses, planning to use her suffering as a weapon against her entire species. You broke the compact. You freed us from our own promise. Admiral Harrison felt the full scope of the change washing over him. His 70-year-old body was growing young again, old injuries healing, strength returning that he had not felt since his 20s. But more than that, he was remembering things, understanding technologies that could reshape reality itself. Throughout human space, the awakening was spreading. On Earth, scientists suddenly understood equations that could describe the birth and death of universes. On colony worlds, farmers found they could make crops grow with a touch. On exploration ships like the Horizon Dawn, engineers discovered their vessels were capable of far more than anyone had ever imagined. The other ships, Captain Rodriguez whispered, looking out through the chamber's viewports. Look at the other ships. The human vessels in the surrounding space were changing. Hull plating flowed like liquid, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden for millennia. Ships that had looked like simple cargo haulers or research vessels now showed their true nature as something that made the Council's greatest warships look like toys. You see, Lisa said to the cowering council members, we never really forgot how to build the tools of power. We just forgot that we had built them. Every human ship, every human device, every human settlement was constructed using knowledge that came from somewhere deeper than conscious memory. Veltar struggled to his feet, his voice cracking with fear. What do you want from us? What will you do now that you remember? Lisa considered the question for a long moment. Around her, the other humans in the chamber were standing straighter, their eyes beginning to glow with the same inner light. They were remembering too, becoming what they had always been meant to be. We will do what we did 12,000 years ago, she said finally. We will restore order to this galaxy, but this time, we will not make the mistake of trusting others to choose peace on their own. The age of human mercy was ending. The age of human justice was about to begin. Admiral Harrison stood up from his chair, and the chains that had held him for hours simply fell away like they were made of paper. His 70-year-old body felt young and strong again, filled with energy he had not felt since he was a cadet. The knowledge flowing through his mind was overwhelming, but somehow he understood all of it perfectly. He knew how to build ships that could travel faster than light without using fuel. He knew how to create weapons that could destroy planets or heal them with equal ease. He knew the location of every human settlement in the galaxy, and he could feel them all awakening just as he was awakening. Around the chamber, the other human prisoners were experiencing the same transformation. Their bonds broke, their wounds healed, and their eyes began to glow with the same inner light as Lisa's. They stood up slowly, looking at their hands in wonder as they felt power flowing through their bodies. Captain Rodriguez jumped down from the observation deck, landing easily despite the 20-foot drop. His body absorbed the impact without effort, and he realized he could probably jump 10 times that distance without injury. The other humans in the deck followed him, moving with a grace and confidence they had never possessed before. The council members huddled together in the center of the chamber, suddenly realizing they had made themselves prisoners in their own torture room. The aliens who had seemed so powerful and terrifying just minutes ago now looked small and pathetic, like children who had been caught playing with matches. Veltar tried one last show of authority. raising himself to his full height and spreading his forearms wide. "You may have regained some of your old power," he snarled, "but you are still outnumbered. The galactic fleets have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." Captain Rodriguez smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the alien step backward. "Our ship, the Horizon Dawn, is not really an exploration vessel," he said. "It never was." Through the chamber's viewports, the assembled fleets watched in growing horror as the modest human ship began to change. The hull plating shifted and flowed like living metal, revealing systems that had been hidden for thousands of years. What had appeared to be a simple science vessel with basic defensive weapons now showed its true nature as something beyond the Council's worst nightmares. Energy fields that bent space itself surrounded the ship. Weapon ports opened to reveal cannons that could fire concentrated starlight. Shield generators that had been disguised as communication arrays now hummed with power that could deflect the impact of entire asteroids. Every human ship was built the same way, Admiral Harrison explained, his voice now carrying the same harmonic authority as Lisa's. "We could not completely forget our nature, so we built our technology to remember for us. Every vessel, every station, every human settlement contains the seeds of what we once were." More human ships were arriving, and each one was undergoing the same transformation. Cargo haulers revealed themselves as massive carriers capable of housing entire fleets. Research vessels sprouted weapon systems that made the Council's dreadnoughts look like toys. Even small personal craft now radiated power that could crack moons. "This is impossible," whispered the Luminari, its blue light flickering with panic. "Our intelligence services monitored human technology for decades. These capabilities were never detected because they were sleeping," Lisa said, walking toward the viewports to watch the transformation of the human fleet. "Just as we were sleeping. But now we are awake, and so are our tools." The crystal alien was trying to communicate with its home world, but its transmission equipment was failing. Every piece of technology in the chamber was malfunctioning, unable to cope with the energy radiating from the awakened humans. The binding protocols included safeguards, Admiral Harrison said, understanding flowing through him like water. If we were ever forced to reclaim our power, all human technology would automatically return to its true configuration. We could not risk being defenseless if someone tried to destroy us. Through the chamber's communication systems, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human colonies that had seemed helpless were suddenly bristling with defensive systems that appeared from nowhere. Human explorers on the galactic rim were discovering that their equipment could do things the manuals had never mentioned. Human prisoners in alien detention centers were walking through walls that should have been able to hold them. "We estimate 6 billion humans spread across the galaxy," Captain Rodriguez said, reading data that seemed to flow directly into his mind.
"All of them are awakening.
All of them are remembering what they really are." The fish thing in the water tank made a sound like drowning. 6 billion progenitors. The old song spoke of when just 1,000 of you nearly destroyed everything. "We learned from our mistakes," Lisa said, her voice sad but determined. "This time we will not allow our power to corrupt us. This time we will use it wisely." She turned to face the council members, and her expression was like a judge pronouncing sentence. "You have 48 hours to withdraw all military forces from human space. You have 1 week to release all human prisoners and slaves. You have 1 month to begin paying reparations for the suffering you have caused." "And if we refuse?" asked the slug creature, though its voice was barely a whisper. Admiral Harrison gestured toward the viewports where more human ships were arriving every minute. But these were not the vessels that had left Earth or the colonies. These were ships that had been waiting in dimensions beyond normal space, hidden for 12,000 years, ready to return when humanity needed them again. The new arrivals made the transformed exploration vessels look small, dreadnoughts the size of moons, carriers that could house entire civilizations, ships designed to travel between galaxies as easily as crossing a room. The true fleet of humanity, the weapons and tools they had hidden away when they chose to become mortal. Then you will learn why the first civilizations of this galaxy chose to accept our compact rather than face our wrath, Admiral Harrison said simply. Lisa walked back to the torture chair where she had died and been reborn. She looked at the bloodstains and the broken machines, remembering every moment of pain they had caused her. But she felt no anger, only sadness for species that had chosen cruelty over wisdom. "We do not want revenge," she said to the trembling council members. "Revenge would make us like you, and we have spent 12,000 years learning to be better than that. But we will have justice, and we will have peace." She gestured, and the chamber's doors opened with a sound like thunder. "You are free to leave and carry our message to your governments. Tell them that humanity is no longer asking for a place in this galaxy. We are taking our place as its guardians." The council members fled like frightened children, their dignity forgotten in their panic to escape. Only Veltar remained for a moment, staring at Lisa with something that might have been respect. "You could have killed us all," he said. "Why did you let us live?" Lisa smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young communications officer she had been just hours ago. "Because someone has to spread the word. Someone has to tell the galaxy that the humans are back." As the aliens fled, the human prisoners gathered around Lisa. Captain Rodriguez knelt beside her, checking to make sure she was really alive, really whole after everything she had endured. "How do you feel?" he asked. Lisa considered the question, looking down at her hands that still glowed with inner light. She was herself, but she was also part of something larger, something that connected her to every human in the galaxy and to the vast history of her species. "I feel like I finally understand who we really are," she said, "and I feel ready to show the galaxy what humanity can become when we stop holding ourselves back." Outside the chamber, the human fleet stretched across space like a wall of stars. On worlds throughout the galaxy, humans were standing up straighter, their eyes bright with newfound purpose. The age of fear was ending. The age of humanity had begun again.